American leadership, long the bedrock foundation for the greatness of our country. It's what we've always prided ourselves on. We've had some great statesmen throughout our history, some great leaders, military, political, even, and just in industry and all kinds of other ways. It's always been great leadership that has really symbolized what is great about America. And one of the reasons why we've been this shining light on a hill, a city on a hill, and why we've been the beacon for so many around the world, because they see the morality of the United States, the conditions upon which they share prosperity for other people, the willingness that we've had to sacrifice on the behalf of others for their benefit, and the way we have rallied the world behind democracy or so many good ideas, and especially the weak, that we've lifted them up and defended them when nobody else would. That's been the hallmark of really what's made America great. That right now is in tatters. And in fact, our activities and our actions in the Middle East right now that the administration is following, and I would just say the president, but it's much more than that. It's really across the board, is just absolutely in shambles, because we are forfeiting leadership and credibility and reputation that we have spent literally generations building. And if these things don't get stopped and checked very soon, the consequence and the cost to us could be irreparable. It may even take decades, generations to recover from. And even if we don't check this slide quickly, we may never recover to the full level that we should be able to get to. The thing that we have earned from, almost the last century, plus more than the last century of leadership that we've shown, genuine, good leadership with positive outcomes for many peoples. Now, this is not to suggest that we've ever been innocent or perfect in the way we've done it. We haven't. We've made some egregious mistakes. You've heard me talk about and write about these things for decades. I've not shied away from calling things out when we've done things poorly. But it's also true, and I do elevate those, that there have been some things we have done really well. And generally speaking, especially in comparison with others around the world, we've done a really good job of leadership in the past. But right now, what's unfolding in Israel with the Israeli-Hamas war and our reactions to it is threatening to undo so much that we have done, specifically in the Middle East, but even at large, because it has ramifications that echo outside of the Middle East. Let me show you a little bit of what we're talking about today. So now this is something that's been ongoing, but here's a really good illustrative point. We're going to start on February 25th, where Benjamin Netanyahu was on American television talking about what his next levels of plans are.
Once we begin the Rafah operation, the intense phase of the fighting is weeks away from completion. Not months, weeks away from completion. And that is, we've already destroyed 18 out of the 24 Hamas terrorist battalions. So we have and 4 of them are concentrated in Rafah. We can't leave the last Hamas stronghold without taking care of it. Obviously, we have to do it. But understand, too, that I've asked the Army to submit to me a double plan. First, to evacuate, to enable the evacuation of the Palestinian civilians in Gaza, and obviously, second, to destroy the remaining Hamas battalions. That gets us a real distance towards the completion of our victory. And that we're not going to give it up. If we have a deal, it'll be delayed somewhat, but it'll happen. If we don't have a deal, we'll do it anyway. It has to be done because total victory is our goal, and total victory is within reach, not months away, weeks away, once we begin the operation.
Now, you may recall late last year, we've been covering this from the outset, but there was an issue where President Biden, early in this, actually like right away, said, "Hey, a two-state solution. That's where this has to end up." And all of this mess that's happened since October 7th and the spike in violence, we need to get that taken care of. Israel needs to respond to the terrorist attack that took place against them, justly go after those who committed it, but it still has to center back on a two-state solution. And you saw Netanyahu dance around that, but not say anything at first that he was willing to do that. Then later on, he got even more emphatic and just said, "Yeah, we're not going to do that. We're going to go from the river to the sea. Everything is going to be ruled by us." Biden continues to say, no, we need a two-state solution. Then his ambassador to the UK, in one of the more infamous exchanges that we put on here a few times, where she was point blank asked by the reporter, he would not allow her to not answer the question, kept circling back to it, and finally in aggravation and annoyance, she said, absolutely not. There is no way we're going to do a two-state solution. Now, you would have thought, okay, that's going to cause some problems here. Now the United States is going to bow up a little bit because we've been saying two-state solution, and we're giving you literally plane loads almost by the day of ammunition, weapons, intelligence support, all kinds of things that you need to run and sustain a war. We've been given it with no strings attached. Now then we're going to stand up and we're going to say, okay, strings attached, except we haven't. So the president of the United States says one thing, the leader of Israel ignores it and says, we're going to do whatever we want to do. Now, in that clip I just played you on the 25th of February, you saw him say, we have a double plan to go into Rafah, and also to make sure that there's, the civilians are taken care of, and that there's a plan, a resource plan to go through about where they can go, how they can be resourced, etc. Well, on Tuesday of this week, General Ryder, the spokesman for the Pentagon, says, yeah, not so much.
Secretary Austin mentioned the need for a credible and implementable plan before any operations in Rafah. Can you say whether he did present the plan?
We have not seen a plan yet from the Israelis when it comes to Rafah operations.
Okay. Netanyahu, right there on American television, says, I've got a double plan. And now the leader of the Pentagon says, yeah, we haven't seen any plan, double or single. There's no plan at all. So you can see over and over, Netanyahu is just ignoring the United States, and there's no consequence. They keep getting whatever they want. They keep doing whatever they want. Now, I'm going to show you a few excerpts of Ambassador Chaz Freeman, who we've had on this show several times, talking about the consequences to this. Because right now, it's looking like we have no agency in this, as though we're almost like an ATM or an arms depot that they can just send orders to. The Israelis can send orders to, and whatever we say is just like blah, 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 give me more of this, and then we do it no matter what they do or say. But as Chaz Freeman points out, there's a cost to this for America.
Our complicity in genocide, which is what this is. There's no mincing words anymore about this. If you doubted that, look at the so-called Flower Massacre. As though the Israeli Defense Forces couldn't wait to let people starve. They had to shoot them before they died of starvation. This is not seen internationally as anything but a horror. And we are complicit. And this spills over to issues like Ukraine. Why should anybody support us on Ukraine if we apparently have the double standards that we do? We're against Russian abuses of human rights in Ukraine, as we should be, but we don't care when they're inflicted on Palestinians. It doesn't affect our behavior.
See, one of the main reasons that the United States has been able to influence events around the globe has been, we got to call it what it is, our sheer massive power, economic and military. So let's not pretend otherwise. But it also has been significantly undergirded by the moral authority that we have, at least periodically have. Let me not oversell that either, because there's always been an undercurrent to that, which has not been as genuine as it had been. But there at least was a measure of it, that we had the moral authority to say, hey, you can't do this, you should do this, and we don't want to see this. And especially when you're talking about people being killed and murdered and slaughtered. The situation that he's talking about right there about what we are saying to Russia, people all over the world are seeing this. And look, they see, we have power. Okay. They get that. But right now, even the power that we have is starting to wear thin, and people are starting to not care about even that part. But the moral authority is virtually wiped out, because when we go and we tell Russia, how dare you bomb these civilian areas, the allegations about Bucha in 2022 and several other places, and bombing, cities with no military value, all these claims that we've had. And we say, President Putin shouldn't do that. And we say, yes, he should go before the Hague. And actually, they have a warrant out for his arrest right now. Well, when they see us then turn a complete blind eye, and I mean a complete blind eye, to when one of our friends is doing orders of magnitude worse. And that's not a hyperbole, folks, because look, the fact is that the total number of civilian innocent people killed in Ukraine after more than 2 full years of full-scale war over an entire country in Europe is less, a lot less, than what has been killed in 5 months of the war in this tiny little Gaza Strip. It's shocking by any capacity. And so when we send there, and some of our biggest leaders, I've seen them both in the Pentagon and in the White House and in some of the congressmen, they make all these heartfelt pleas of umbrage and how dare they do this, and then not a peep out of most of them. There's been a few. We had Bernie Sanders on yesterday. You showed with some of the things he says, but those are minor and few and far between. Otherwise there's nothing, and it continues to get worse. And one of the operational questions that we need to explore here is, what kind of advice is the president getting? Who is telling him what he should do? I mean, even before he makes these these decisions, these things that we've shown on television keep happening. You got to wonder who has his ear. Chaz Freeman addressed that very issue.
Whether the president is in fact getting sound military advice is a real question. Every indication is that he's surrounded by, put it mildly, sycophants, people who tell him what he wants to hear, not what he needs to hear. We saw this in the run-up to the fruitless search for WMD in Iraq, where George W. Bush didn't want to hear anything that contradicted the advice of his senior advisors, which he bought into, that there was WMD. And Saddam is a bad guy, and we got to get him out of power. Is there any evidence that Mr. Biden is receiving sound advice from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, from military advisors, or is he the prisoner of this little group of people that he brought with him from Congress?
And look, I mean, it's always about, number one, you got to call it what it is here again, too. Leadership at the top. It all starts at the top. And if the guy at the top doesn't have his own moral code, moral compass, then whoever he surrounds himself with are probably going to mirror that. I mean, that's one of the reasons why he trusted him in the first place. So Ambassador Freeman there is asking, who his advisors, who's talking to him, but it's the people that he hand selected around him. So the likelihood is that they're giving him the advice he wants to hear. And, therein is your problem. Therein is his problem. But our problem is in the consequence of that, because it is eroding and, in fact, destroying our moral authority that we have to say anything to anyone without getting derision. Look, I'm just kind of checking real quick on some of the comments that are rolling through in here. And look, a lot of them are just like saying, hey, what are you talking about? The United States has been delusional, just lots of negative things in there. And I get it, because even on a platform like the one we have here, lots of people, and we got folks from all over the world, folks. This is not just an American channel here. And they don't like what they're seeing from the United States, and it has a cost. And actually, Ambassador Freeman talked a little bit about that too. And what I'm going to show you after this next piece is just going to make it cringe.
The longer this goes on, the less clout influence the United States will have overseas. The fact that Joe Biden feels obliged to take orders from Netanyahu and can't do anything about Netanyahu basically spitting in the face of the United States on the issues in Gaza just keeps funneling more money and weapons to Netanyahu to go on doing what we've told him he shouldn't do. This makes us look incredibly weak.
Makes us look incredibly weak. And Netanyahu spitting in our face. Some of you may think, what is he talking about, spitting in the face? What he was specifically referring to there was a juxtaposition of some things that happened last Sunday and on Tuesday of this week. First of all, you had the Vice President of the United States. So the number 2 person in our government with all the authority of that office. And of course, she doesn't say anything publicly unless it's cleared by the president. And so the administration, this is their position. She went in and emphatically said, we are basically demanding a ceasefire, to happen immediately. And then 2 days later, you see what Netanyahu's reaction was. This is what he's talking about, was the spit in the face.
And given the immense scale of suffering in Gaza, there must be an immediate ceasefire. For at least the next 6 weeks, which is what is currently on the table.
The war continues and will continue until the end, until we achieve all our goals. The cruelty of the kidnappers, eliminating Hamas, and ensuring that it will no longer pose a threat to Israel, sparing no one. We will persevere and continue our relentless fight on land, sea, and air until we achieve total and undeniable victory.
Okay, first of all, that's an embarrassment to America. It's an embarrassment to the vice president. And there should have been a public response to that. She said, we demand an immediate ceasefire, an immediate ceasefire. 2 days later, Netanyahu says, no ceasefire. We are going to continue on. And he says it, the spit in the face part was that F-35 over his shoulder, which came from America. So he's saying, I'm going to take all your stuff. I'm going to take your money, your bullets, your bombs, your missiles, all that stuff. You can say whatever you want to do, and we are going to continue to go here. And so far, America has done exactly what Netanyahu has said. We've done nothing. And there was an exchange. I see. We'll have to just look at the date on this. I don't remember if it was either earlier today or maybe yesterday. Matt Miller, the spokesman to the State Department, made one more, emphatic claim that the United States is going to do.
Not only is the situation on the ground right now in Gaza unacceptable, but it's unsustainable. It cannot continue this way. You have seen the United States take action to airdrop food supplies in. You have seen us take action to fund the delivery of humanitarian assistance. You have seen us announce that we are exploring a maritime option to deliver humanitarian assistance through new routes, but it still is incumbent upon the government of Israel to do more as well. We have seen some improvement in the distribution, but we need to see dramatically more go in. We need to see it go in not just through Rafah and Kerem Shalom, but we need to see it go in through a crossing in the north. And we have made very clear to the government of Israel that's what we expect, and that we expect to see improvement. And as the president said, there can be no excuses.
That is what we expect. That is what we require. And the president said, no excuses. Now, that was yesterday. What do you think that we're going to find today? Do you think that Netanyahu is going to come back out and say, well, the president of the United States said this, and so now we're going to go ahead and open up 4 more corridors for humanitarian aid? There's not going to be a peep out of Israel. I can assure you, you won't hear anything. There will be no response to this at all. And look, even in the context of that press conference, some of the reporters said, hey, you guys have been saying this a lot, but nothing ever happens. You keep making these threats, but nothing changes. And he basically ignored the question, didn't answer it. I mean, what else is he going to say? But I mean, he's actually really, that even more so than the one by Harris on Sunday, he has said, Miller there put us in a tight position by tying it directly to the president's name by saying he said no excuses. Okay, if there are excuses, if there is no action, what are you going to do? Because let me just tell you right now, if the president does nothing, then he has completely abdicated moral authority, physical authority, anything else. Because if we don't stop giving them weapons, if we don't put major strings, even ropes on any of this aid we get, major changes, then we are subservient to what the prime minister of Israel wants to do. That is a de facto reality. That is the truth. I don't care what anybody wants to hear, what you want to call it, what you want to put some caveats. None of that matters. America is completely subservient to what the prime minister, you can't even say Israel, you can't even say the government. It's that one man who is running the show. He's running it in Tel Aviv. He's running it in Washington, D.C. He's running it at the Pentagon. He gets everything he's asked for so far. Nobody's put a stop on anything here. We keep making demand after demand and no change. And of course, who's the bill payer for this? The immediate bill payer. I'm talking about our, continue of problems later on in other theaters, et cetera. But who are the immediate bill payers? Of course, it's the innocent men, women, and children in Palestine. There were 2.3 million at the start of this. We don't know what the actual number is now because so much of the place has been wiped out. There's no telling how many bodies are under a lot of the rubble that's been in these different places here. but the number is extremely high, no matter what it is. And the fact is that because of all the physical damage, that there's no hope for any of these people. Can you imagine for a moment, put yourself in a situation in your life right now, whatever you've got to do today, that all of a sudden it's all over. Your house is wiped out. You're on the run with whatever you can carry. And you go to whatever across town to try and survive someplace. And then all of a sudden that house is going to get bombed. Then you get warnings that there's new attacks coming there and you have to run someplace else. And you can't, there's a fence around you. You can't get out. You can only go certain areas within the city that you live. And that's it. You're trapped in there. How are you going to feel when there is nobody outside? There's no cavalry coming to your rescue. What has historically been America's role, that we come to the rescue of the downtrodden, the weak, the powerless, those who are being exploited, those who are being killed. We've come to their rescue in nearly any way you want to talk about. But instead, we're providing the bombs. And look, these pictures you're seeing there right now of some food, that's not something that the United States should be doing. That's something that we should be demanding and requiring the Israeli government to do. Why is Matt Miller yesterday talking about we're exploring the possibility of opening up corridors from the sea, maritime passages? Why should America do that? That's what Israel should be doing, not the United States. This is their war. This is the people who have lived in their territory. They have an obligation to do this. They have an obligation to do it. Now, those pitiful few drops there makes great video, but it's a drop in the bucket. You're talking 38,000 meals for a population of 2 million people who were desperately hungry. That's not even a single percent of a fraction of one part of the day's meals. So it's great video. It doesn't do anything to solve the problems in there. America could solve this problem by saying, all right, Israel, you're a sovereign in what you do there. We can't make you do anything. We don't have the power, but there won't be one more C-17 plane, military plane, land in Tel Aviv anymore from this moment forward until you make these major changes, until you stop, go on a ceasefire, an immediate ceasefire, and open up multiple corridors and these literally hundreds of food trucks that are waiting out there, that many of them could flood into the place right now, but they're not allowing it. They've actually blocked a lot of that stuff until we say, you will do this or you'll get nothing more from us. That's what needs to happen. That's what needs to happen for the people of Palestine. That's what needs to happen for American credibility. Look, all of this nonsense about, anything besides what the government in Tel Aviv says is attacked, as being anti-Israeli or something like that is stupid. It's immature and it's just stupid. I'm going to call it what it is. It is foolish for America to keep going down that path because it harms our interest. It is destroying our credibility around the world. And it is just eroding at this even sense that America is supposed to be the good guy. America is supposed to be the one that helps out the weak instead of providing the bombs to blow up the weak, which is practically and effectively what we're doing. Again, forget what anybody's words are saying. That's what's actually happening on the ground. And I assure you, folks, people all over the Middle East, all over Asia, even all over Europe, and even in the Western world are seeing this. Even in the United States, you see there's a growing discomfort with this and a growing anger, even within our own shores. So there is a trend moving this direction, but it's moving too slow. We need to have leadership at the top right now if they won't do it because it's the right thing to do. I think that's self-evident. That would have already happened if that was the case. So they've got to be pressured into doing it, because if not, like I said at the outset of this, the damage to our country could be irreparable, and it could be a generation or more in duration. Those are what's at stake in the Middle East right now. The proximal issue is stop the carnage and the destruction of the way of life for an entire people, and killing hundreds of women and children every day. Every day. That's the proximate. That's the first thing in here. But the second thing in for our own interest going forward, well beyond the Middle East, well beyond this time, even after this war is done, folks, the things that we do right now are going to set the stage for years and years to come, and are going to cause us more and more problems that's going to take a generation to undo. We need to stop the damage now. We need to stop the carnage in the Middle East right now and stop the killing of these innocent people. Whatever happened on October 7th, there was a right way to do this. There was a right way that we even do. We hold our own military to a very high standard that makes it very difficult for the military, but it's actually doable to prioritize protecting the civilian population. There is a path to do that. They chose not to do it. And now then we are where we are. But that's what needs to happen right now for everybody's sake going forward. Because the last thing I want to point out here is that the irony is, or the perverseness of this is that the path that Netanyahu himself is taking, that he blindly thinks he's going to total victory, is nonsense. It's absurd. It's dark, because it will have the opposite is being built. Netanyahu, and there's been many reports of this out there, because of his policies over the years prior to this, he helped enable the conditions to fester under which Hamas caused this terrorist event in the first place. He was deficient in how he handled his domestic issues there, which helped the Hamas actually accomplish these horrible things that they did to his country on there. So he's going to have to answer for that. And apparently that's already on the table. He's going to have to answer for that. But he's also going to have to answer for what he's doing now, because what he's doing now is orders of magnitude worse than what he did then, because the anger and the animosity and the hatred for Israel, both inside the Palestinian areas, the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, and in the region, are getting supercharged way above what they were on the 6th of October, before all this exploded. And so he is building long-term insecurity for his people. So when he makes that absurd claim at the beginning of this, that within weeks, that they're going to have victory and total victory is insanely bad. It's flat out wrong. And he's going to be harmed for it. Now, why should we enable him to harm himself and us and the Palestinian people in the process? Therein is your problem. And that is what America needs to fix quickly. And that is your deep dive for this morning. This afternoon, later tonight, rather, President Biden is going to deliver his version of the State of the Union address from the Capitol in Washington, D.C. At 3:30 this afternoon, I'm going to actually present the real State of the Union, especially as it relates to foreign and military policies, which have direct ramifications for our national security as a nation. We're going to talk about that. Of course, some of the things we mentioned here will be discussed, but there'll be a lot more than that, and you're not going to want to miss that. 3:30 p.m. this afternoon, live from the Capitol in Washington, D.C. And we will see you next time on Daniel Davis Deep Dive.